My house was built in 1904. It is a single family home, wooden frame setting on a concrete block foundation. I've been living here for about 12 years now. Of all the weird things that me and my siblings have seen or heard in this house, this one event is my favourite. This event happened to my brother. About 10 years ago, my brother and his best friends had started a garage band playing mostly Spanish rock, alternative music but in Spanish. His friends could only get together on Sunday afternoons. They would practice into early evening, and they would usually call it quits by around about 8 PM. This was the time I usually showed up and went to bed, because I worked the graveyard shift. This happened in late fall, so the days were getting shorter. They had just finished a long session when the decision to head to somebody else's house came about. My brother handed his keys to his buddy so they could load up the equipment. Everyone had filed out the basement, but the tricky part was that they needed to walk to the back of the basement, up the back stairs, through the kitchen doorway, down the hallway into the living room and out the front porch. Everyone was outside sitting in my brother's truck waiting for him. My brother was walking back upstairs when he remembered that he left his pancakes in a to-go container back down in the basement on top of the speaker. He made the decision to go back. Now the basement is not clean, with 4 sight lines that had been partitions made, and the boiler and the main heating unit right smack bang in the middle. So after my brother walks back, he's about to retrieve his food container when out the corner of his eye he sees it. It was a shadowy figure, right in his peripheral vision. This feeling of dread and uneasiness washed over my brother. We had been taught that if you were in the presence of a spirit or a ghost and you felt a bad vibe, to say a quick prayer or to swear at it. My brother chose the latter. He basically told it, "Hey, fuck you, I don't have time for this shit." My brother started walking to the back of the basement and briskly up the stairs, closing doors and turning lights off as he was walking out. The light switch was on the opposite side of the front door. Luckily, the door was open and the light from the street lamp was flooding in the living room with its amber light. My brother said he felt something at his back, but at no point did he turn around. As he flicked the last light switch, the living room went dark, as did the rest of the house. As he stepped out, he pulled on the door, closing it behind him. Still holding his food container in one hand, he jogged down the few porch steps. He walked towards the front gate. Our house resides far from the main street, essentially having a large front yard but no rear gate. As he closed the gap between himself and his friend-laden truck, he kinda smiled and thought things over in his head, mad at himself for spooking out when there was no reason. He climbed into the driver's side of the truck, putting on his seatbelt and getting ready to pull out of the parking spot directly in front of the house, when his friends asked, "Hey, wait, what about your brother? Isn't he coming with us?" My brother answered, "What do you mean? He went to work early tonight, he's already gone, can you see his car anywhere?" The next question they asked, "So then, who was walking behind you when you was leaving the house?" I have always been a skeptic. Ghosts, aliens, monsters, they were all just stories to me. But after what I had experienced in the southwest, my perspective on the unknown has been changed forever. I was on a road trip with my best friend, Jake. We had decided to take a detour through the Navajo reservation in Arizona, mainly because of the scenic beauty and the rich history of the area. We had heard tales of skinwalkers, but we laughed them off. They were just myths, right? Our first day on the reservation was uneventful. We visited a few local spots, interacted with some locals, and set up camp near a canyon. As night fell, we sat around a campfire sharing stories and enjoying the scenery of the desert. Around midnight, Jake decided to turn in. I stayed up, mesmerised by the stars. The Milky Way stretched across the sky and I felt a profound sense of peace. That is, until I heard it. A low, guttural growl echoed throughout the canyon. I froze, thinking it might be a coyote or mountain lion, but then heard a voice. It was distorted, as if someone speaking through a broken radio, but it was unmistakably Jake's voice. "Come here," it beckoned. Confused, I turned to the tent. Jake was sound asleep. The voice called out again, this time from the opposite direction. I grabbed a flashlight and shone it towards the source, and what I saw will haunt me forever. Standing on the ridge was a figure. It looked like a man, but its limbs were elongated and its eyes glowed a sickly yellow. It wore tattered clothing and its skin was mottled grey, but the most disturbing part was its face. It was Jake's face. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The creature mimicked Jake's voice again. "Come here!" It took steps towards me, its movements jerky and unnatural. I bolted to the tent, shaking Jake awake. "We need to go. Now," I hissed. He looked at me, confused, but the urgency in my voice spurred him into action. We packed up as quickly as we could, the creature's voice echoing around us, mimicking our voices, our laughter, our conversations from earlier. As we sped away in our car, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The creature stood in the middle of the road watching us, its yellow eyes just glowing in the dark. We didn't stop driving until we reached the nearest town. We checked into a motel, and I spent the night researching skinwalkers. The legend said that they were witches who could take the form of animals or people, using their voice to lure victims. I don't know what we encountered that night, but I do know one thing: the stories are real. The Southwest is beautiful, but it holds secrets that are beyond comprehension, and I will never, ever set foot in Navajo Reservation ever again. To all of those that are listening to this, please be careful when you venture into unknown territories. Some legends are rooted into truth, and some nightmares are very real. Hi, my name is Jane. I'm not sure if this will even be out there since I can't trust anything I'm seeing these days, but I'll start from the beginning. I am a 37-year-old surgeon for most of the day, and I come home to my husband and my dog. It was just a regular Saturday when the nightmares began. At first I would just dream of dark voids where I would wander around aimlessly in search of something. I'm not sure what, but my mind insists that I have something to find in that awful darkness, and then after hours of walking around I would just wake up. I thought nothing of it at first, and I just thought of it as some weird dream I had, and then the next day it happened again. There was no difference the first few times, but when it happened again for the fourth time, the dream changed. I was still in the void, but I couldn't move. I was just frozen in place, looking in one direction, and I saw something off in the distance. It was just eyes, but there was something off about them. They weren't human. I woke up in a cold puddle of sweat, but shook it off as the effect of some shows that I watched earlier, or a book I was reading throughout the day. I still couldn't stop thinking about those eyes. Night came around. I went to sleep and there I was again, in the void with those eyes, except they were closer. I didn't see the thing move at all. It was like a still image lingering for hours until I woke up in the morning. I decided to talk to my partner about these strange dreams, and at first he just brushed them off as a rare occurrence, but 2 more times of the creature getting closer and me waking up in cold sweat in the middle of the night, he decided to do some researching. Mostly the searches just resulted in meaningless suggestions like reoccurring nightmares being an effect of substance abuse or trauma. But none of those were the case, as my job required me to be extremely focused. Then some suggested it could be the cause of a spirit, and since we had nothing else to try, we followed the instructions which, no surprise, did absolutely nothing to stop the nightmares. A week later, and I could finally make out the thing in my dreams. It was a slender, reddish grey-skinned humanoid. reduced to skin and bones and abnormally tall. A wide mouth-shaped hole in the shape of a round smile and two giant gaping voids for eye sockets and two white glowing dots looking at me. Honestly, the creature looked absolutely absurd, like some creepypasta you'd find on the internet, but it instilled fear into me. What would happen if it got close enough to me? Would I be killed, tortured, or something even worse? I was scared to find out, so I decided to stay awake for the night to avoid having that dream again, since it seems the only way it can get closer to me is when I'm asleep. My husband thought I was crazy and believing a guy in my dream could physically harm me and told me that I can't stay awake forever. He was right, of course, but the fear of looking into its eyes again made me stay awake. I began my own research, looking for medicine or anything that could help me get rid of these nightmares. I tried everything, yet every time I went back to sleep, it was there. Each time closer than the last. Eventually I was fired from my job. It was inevitable, of course, considering my mental state. And my dogs began barking at me every night, and it drove my husband mad until he left me too. Strange things started to happen around the house too. First it was small things like a glass out of place or a book on the floor. But then I began to hear footsteps and floorboards creaking. Doors are being opened, walls start to form cracks, and there are consistent knocks on the roof. A few days after I dozed off again, and the thing was there again, about 10 feet away from me this time. But when I woke up, my dog was gone without a trace. I searched all throughout the house and she was nowhere to be found. This thing has taken everything from me. My life now is just a cycle of trying to stay awake and being tortured by hallucinations. And my house is taunting me during the day while I'm still hearing sounds and barking at night. I'm too scared to even leave my own room now. I'm not sure how long I can stay awake until eventually I doze off again. Please, if there's anything I can do, tell me. I'm not sure how long I can go before I meet it again.